Welcome to our CEO Insights sessions. We do 2 of these per month on the People Strategy podcast, and I cannot wait for you to join us this week as we chat with a CEO about key insights of how they've implemented a people strategy in their business. Join me in welcoming our guest for this week. Do you ever want that partner that is so passionate about getting you what you need to be successful in your next job and career? Well, guess what? That is Chris Allaire. I'm so excited to introduce you to Chris as we chat about how we hire the right people for a role and very specifically what those processes take to do that. Chris is the founder and CEO of Averity, which he calls the best staffing company to work for in North America. And Chris is going to walk through his process of how he brings in the best people for the role, how artificial intelligence can and cannot be helpful in this process, and how humans and authenticity are key to ensuring we have the right hire. Can't wait for you to give it a listen. Hey, Chris, it is great to chat again with you today.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
You know, I'm just cracking up at our prep conversations and the fact that you're like, Tracy, I've been on 20 podcasts and every single one of them have been like, hi, Chris, who are you? We're going to do a CNN interview and let me ask you the 72 questions. And I'm like, dude, let me get to know you first.
I enjoyed our conversation earlier this week when we were talking about just you're right, getting to know each other to build a fun platform and framework just to kind of to flow on when we connect for this.
You know, like I need guardrails and bumpers to make sure we don't go off the rails. So we may or may not today. I'm not really sure, but I'm curious. You are in the world of recruiting and the people business. And, you know, we've spent some time to build a relationship to get to know each other and, you know, trust each other a bit. So why are you so passionate about building relationships, especially with both clients and potential applicants for those clients, and doing it in a way that it really values the whole person?
I am a huge fan of you need to have 3 elements, in my opinion, to be able to do what we do. And you have to be able to, someone has to know you, they have to like you, and they have to trust you. Now, it doesn't necessarily always happen in that order, but especially in the job search process, it's a very emotional process. When you're hiring somebody, when you're looking, there's a lot of things that go back and forth. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of talk. And the person in whom you're speaking to during this process, you have to trust them and you have to understand that they have your best interest at heart, which typically means you have to know them. And then if you genuinely like who they are, you have someone who's playing in your favor. So depending on who you're speaking to, you know, those 3 elements of know you, like you, trust you are critical for the stage when it comes to, hey, Chris, I really like this job. Here's why. Can you go above and beyond to try to get me this job? Or, hey, Chris, I really like this candidate. We really want to hire her. You know, what is it going to take to get this person on board? But then understanding everything that's really going on right there in that whole, in that what I would call the transactional phase, but then being able to position that into information that's genuinely and transparently and authentically relevant. When you have a relationship with somebody, there's no, you never have to backtrack, right?
Right.
You don't have to say anything different than you said yesterday because you're authentic. The word I coined is genuosity. You exploit this genuosity out there and people are like, cool, I like it. And it's that weird thing is like, I don't know what it is about you, but I just trust you and I know you have my best interest, so I'll listen to you. And if you're authentic with it, it works. You know, when it comes to finding a job, when it comes to finding the right candidate for a job, there's a lot of unforeseen aspects that could go into it. So you have to make sure the person you're partnered with, that's your intermediary between what's going on, has the right intentions of everything that can happen.
And this, you know, it's like that building the trust to know they've got my back, to know they're not going to put me into a culture that is not aligned to my personal values. They're going to, you know, put me into a position that's aligned with what my career interests are. If I'm looking for a growth track, if I'm looking for whatever that is, I trust that we're going to have that alignment. And work-life balance is really important. What's important to me in my personal life right now? Because guess what? Our whole selves show up at work, not just like the work self, it's the whole self that shows up at work and really getting to know that whole person.
There's nothing you can get away with lying with on this job.
No.
So you can't, because if you lie to someone about all the things that the company's offering, and the person takes a job based on your fabrications or lies, if you will, then they show up to work and they find out that none of these things are true. They're going to quit that job. They're never going to speak to you again. And then the client is never going to speak to you again. So you've done all your little sales mentality tactics that I was taught in page 101 of the How to Close Them book, right? But then you've pissed off a client and you've pissed off a candidate. And I hate to tell you this, but the candidate quit or they got fired. The client's never going to talk to you again. You're never going to get paid. So you haven't done anything. All you've done is piss off a bunch of people that are never going to call you in. So like, why would you bother doing any of that? Like, put it all out there, let everyone know what's going on. And again, we talked, like, law firms love to come in on Friday afternoons, and I love them on Friday afternoons because I am one of those people who's like, you know what? Hey, listen, take the weekend and think about it. Make sure you're not going to have buyer's remorse. I don't deal well with buyer's remorse. I don't need it. My client doesn't need it. Candidates, like, just be happy with the decision you're making. Make an educated decision. And when you decide on that decision, you know that you're in the right position for it. And then our job is to make sure that everything is going to work smoothly for it.
How do you, as a recruiter, prepare your candidates to make the right decision before an offer is actually made?
Get all your questions answered. And my biggest thing is to tell people is like, what you want to do is make sure you have a list of all the primary things that you need to have answered, and even come up with a couple of things that you know are concerns, but maybe not be concerns, but you want to get answered anyways. Get all those things answered.
So do you have some examples of that? Because we have so many employers listening right now. And so often I think when we can reverse engineer this to say, hey, to the client or to the employer we're working with as they're, creating those plans and programs, look, these are all the questions that are really important to the applicants. Let's make sure we're answering them ahead of time and that we're being incredibly honest with what it is, because we want to repel as many people as we actually want to attract.
Right off the top, a lot of questions that a lot of people need to know right now. Number one, hybrid. Realistically speaking, how hybrid are you? Are you 3 days mandatory in the office? Is it 3 days theoretically in the office? Are you 5 days on site? Like, what is your version of, everyone's version of hybrid is a little bit different. We all know what on-site is. We all know what remote is. What is hybrid? So vocabulary on what that means right off the bat, critical. 2, future of technology. I'm in technology recruiting. So obviously, from a technical aspect, the futures of the technology that the organization is getting into, working on, innovations, et cetera, are they aligned with where you want to go, what you're doing, passionate about, et cetera, intellectual curiosity. So making sure that those things are uncovered. Because there's a lot of times they're like, no, this is what we're using. This is all we're using. Now, granted, some things are going to change on the job, but making sure that those things are uncovered while they're talking. If you're bringing someone in a management position, you want to talk about what are your thoughts and goals around building teams underneath you, leading teams, managing teams. Also, if you're bringing in someone even as a principal, senior level engineer, architect, you want to talk about how the teams around you are going to be built, how they're structured, what's the reporting structure going to be, what's the expectations on communication. So those are really important aspects that someone can talk about during, like, these are mostly interviews that are happening, depending on where the stage of the organization is. What are you building around yourself? If you notice, a lot of these questions are after, typically late in the process of, hey, you're who we want to hire. I know I want to work here. Now let's make sure, like, all the, what I say was like, we'll uncover the mud. Like, let's clean it all off. Depending on and actually I would say even no matter what the organization is, funding, financing, things like this, as far as the positioning of the organization, are important to know. And if you're going to start a company, you're before you decide to take on a position, whatever it is, if you're especially as a principal, senior level, staff level engineer, director, VP, et cetera, you have all the rights to understand where the company's footing is financially. And just because they are publicly held, as we've seen in the last 2.5 years, right, doesn't make you financially stable. You have the right to ask these questions, because there are a lot of people that I've seen take positions and don't have these questions answered, And inside of a calendar year, their company runs out of money, or they
Right.
burnt through 150 million in funding,
Right.
or a lot of organizations out there are operating on 100% borrowed funds, which at any given moment, the banks, investment capital, venture, whatever they got the money from, has the right to come back and say, listen, we're going to pull our position because of your product offering or because things aren't going as well as whatever the situations are. And those are different business things. And it's not, you're not always going to get the answer you want to hear. And I think that's the important thing. And I think it's one of like the more important part about just communication with people in general. But it's like, don't ask questions to get the answer you want to hear. Ask questions to understand everything you're really getting into. So when it starts, there's no surprises. You're like, no, we already talked about this. Like, oh, you need me in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? It's like, yeah, remember we just talked about it on Friday when you took the job? Like, remember, Tuesday mornings, mandatory 8 a.m. meetings? Like, we talked about that. So there's no surprises. And so my whole thing is like, make sure you understand any surprises that can come up, get them out, talk to them. And then that way you don't have anything that you turn around and be like, oh, it's not like I thought it was.
And I
You're
think
not
that
real.
there's an and both here too of what is it that organizations are actually sharing up front without the candidate having to ask and probe for it, and vice versa. And so with that being said, I mean, business is really about people. Business is done with people and it's about those relationships with people. And I love how within, your answer, it was really about a definition of the facts. Let me understand what hybrid actually means. Let me understand what financial solvency actually means. And let's ensure that we are truly on the same page and have the same definition of this, because we can get off on the wrong foot very, very quickly and have buyer's remorse very, very quickly because we thought it was something different than what our assumption of it was.
Vocabulary, critical.
Absolutely.
I think
Yep.
the biggest breakdown of people on why things don't work out is communication. A lot of times broken communication starts with broken vocabulary. So I'm pretty lenient on, I'm sorry, I'm pretty, the opposite of lenient actually. It's not quite a dictatorship, but it's damn close on the vocabulary that we use when we speak to people is the same. And things are like, yeah, let's pull the trigger. I don't know what that means. Do you want to hire the candidate? Yes, I do. Yeah, sounds great. I don't know what sounds great means. Is that a yes? Do you want to offer this person a job? If they offer you this much money, will you accept the position? Common vocabularies, offer, acceptance, start date. These are vocabularies that are not negotiable. And I love people that are like, yeah, sounds great. Make it happen. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Are you going to offer this person $180,000 a year? Can they start on Monday? Are we prepared for onboarding? It's like, oh, geez, like, okay, yes, I'd like to make them an offer and they can't start on Monday. And then it's like, aha. And then you can start getting onto it. Common vocabulary, get down to it, make sure that there's no misinterpretations of what someone says.
And when we talk about misinterpretations, this is a conversation that comes up a lot, especially in tech space. And we're seeing a lot of communication breakdowns happen right now with AI and like crazy bot emails and all of the things that are happening within this. Your face just lit up because you knew where I was going with this, and you're going to get on a tangent in about 2.5 seconds. But I'm curious, with AI, where are people within AI? And why is it so important that as we look at the new technologies coming in, that we front and center look at the people that it impacts, how it impacts, and who unwinds it when it goes wrong? That was like 4 questions in one,
Oh
Chris.
God, you've asked so many questions in one sitting. So AI has been around for a long time. It hasn't been front and center the way it is now. But I think the correct answer, in my opinion, is understanding that it's a tool for the person, right? It's understanding that it's not the car, it's the driver. The way I've thought about AI recently, actually, and I brought this up to a friend of mine, was like, it's like giving a really bad golfer a better golf club. It doesn't make them a better golfer. You still suck, but now you just have a new weapon that you can throw against a tree. So that's what AI kind of is. It doesn't make you better at your job. It's great for helping you when you're screwing up. Like, I'm lost for an idea. Let me AI it real quick and come up with some thoughts. The places that I've seen AI was like traumatic, like awesome stuff that they're doing out there are in biotech research, understanding hundreds of thousands of lines of data and then being able to compress it and then analyze it and give it back to you in a usable report format. The things that finance is doing with it. not only like machine learning, but predictive analytics on, outcomes of weather patterns and things like that are out there. Now they have the opportunity to analyze this data and interpret it quickly and powerfully. So there are places where I look at it and I'll say it's phenomenal and it should be used. On the sales, recruiting, and human side of the business, I don't think it has any place over here whatsoever. I think anybody who understands human beings that wants to be in a people-oriented business or likes to talk to people needs to get this out of the repertoire as quickly as possible. And all this stuff about like AI generated personalized messages, they're not personalized. Like I've tried it. I'm sure you've tried it. We've all tried it. And you read it. And then first thing you look at is like, there's no way in hell I would have ever written this. So anyone who gets this message from me already knows it's not personalized. So like they could read it and be like, what? Like, Chris, are you kidding me with this? Like, you didn't type this. We all know that. Like the grammar is way too good. The spelling is way too good. It's way too formal. This is not you. So right off the bat, so then you have to get this stuff and then you spend most of the time editing it.
Right. So hang on one second. I want to go back to authenticity and trust.
Yes. How are you going to trust
somebody? An AI written message does not allow us to have the authenticity and trust within it.
So two people from two different companies told me about how in the tech space, we can write more personalized messages that are about meaningful connection. I'm like, right off the bat, what you've written me is not personalized or about meaningful connection. And it's not about the numbers. I'm like, no, it's exactly about the numbers. So if you're going to use a template, we've had templates for years. Use a template. That's fine. I don't like, everyone knows you're going to send an email template out. It's going to have a job description. It's going to have a pitch. It's going to have something you've done. It's cool. Don't worry about it. Take 14 seconds and, personalize it enough to whom you're getting in touch with. And then if you're going to send it, send it. Now, these days of email correspondence, cold email correspondence rates are like 0.01% success rate anyways. So it's like, well, why not send out a gazillion of them to see what hits? But if you know people, if you have relationships with them and you are in communication with them, I don't care if it's every 5 years or every 3 days. It doesn't take you more than 60 seconds, maybe a minute and a half to put together something authentic. And that's the other thing is like, if you can't spare 90 seconds to put together an email that's actually like a friendly email to somebody that you have a relationship with, what are you doing? I can go on a tangent about that one, but just like, what are you doing? Like why do you need to have a robot write your email for you?
Yeah. And I want to take this into kind of the recruiting world right now for a minute, because there's so much of the spam that's coming out on both sides of this. And what I know, Chris, is that you're doing recruiting a bit differently. You're really kind of looking at and saying, what does meaningful and fulfilling work look like? What is the dream that the candidate has? Like, what is the dream and the outcome that the employer is looking for to really figure out if this is the right fit? So, I may have given away a little bit of the special sauce in my question, but really, like, what makes what you're doing in recruitment different, other than the fact that you're not using AI because it waters down the authenticity. So what turns up the authenticity with how you do recruiting?
Diving in depth onto what's and whys. So on the client end specifically, like what we do is it's always you gather information first. What are you looking for? What do you need? And when we start doing things, the way I've always taught how to do it was you've got these job descriptions. And if you read them online, it's like, what's the job? 3 years of Python. 3 years of Python is not a job. 3 years of Python is a skill set. Like, okay, I've been using Python for 3 years. But I mean, like, what are you doing? What are you building? Who's using it? What's your goal with the product? How is it generating revenue? What's the team size? What's it look like? Where's this person fit on the team? What are your goals moving forward? So what's your business? When you really understand what's going on internally within an organization on the applications, the software, the overall environment of what they're doing, then you understand why they're looking for someone, why it's critical, what they need, and then how to position it in front of somebody so they're genuinely interested. So, on the candidate side, you need 3 things. They need to be qualified, they need to be interested, and they need to be available. So on our end, the way it works is we're set up in a vertical structure on technology. So we already basically know that you're using X, Y, and Z. I'll go back to Python. So I've known you've been using Python for years. So my question is like, hey, listen, I know you've been using Python for years. I know you build distributed systems. I get a client that's building this, and this. This is what they're doing. This is their architecture. This is how they're going about it. This is what they're looking for. Are you interested in that at all? And all of a sudden it's like, man, that sounds like a really cool project. I'm interested. So now I've got qualified, interested, and great. Do you want to talk to Traci? Yeah, I'd love to. And so now I have that information that I can get over to you. And now on our end, same thing. We've done the exact same, the mirror image with the candidate. What are you doing? Where do you fit on the team? What are you building? Describe it to me. How is the architecture in place? So we're gathering all this information on like what they were doing, and can they explain it? Can they articulate it to you? And then so you've got all this authentic information that a robot can't pick out, or AI is never going to pick out. They're just going to pick out a bunch of keywords and buzzwords and like put it on paper. But it's like, then I can call you, Traci, as a hiring client and say, listen, I've got two candidates that I know that are phenomenal for this job. Let me explain them to you real quick. I've got candidate A and I get candidate B. Candidate A is doing X, Y, and Z. Candidate B is doing P, D, and Q. Their backgrounds are probably either already in your inbox or in your client portal. Check them out. Let me know when you can talk to them. And our ratio to from submittal to interview is extremely high. And I mean, like on average, 1-to-1, maybe a little over 1-to-1, maybe 1.5-to-1, because we take the time to really understand everything that's going on to the best of our ability, and it's marketed and positioned correctly. We rarely, if ever, have any pushback on having people get interviews.
And, what I really heard within that is we're really paying close attention to what is most important and what we're doing within each of these, and we're defining again that language. So, with that being said, based on our conversation, what is a challenge that you have for our listeners as they, kind of think about our conversation today and what they can, implement inside of their organization to have a really strong positive win for their people?
I think there's a lot to unpack in that. So if you're an organization, you have staff. Obviously, there's attrition, and then there's attraction, and there's retention, right? So depending on where you are, there's a lot of times that a lot of organizations are so focused on attraction that they've forgotten about attrition and retention. And they're like, oh, we have to grow the team. We have to grow the team. We have to grow the team. But meanwhile, as they're hiring people, they're experiencing a 33 to 35% to 40% turnover ratio. Like, spend a little bit more time, focus on the people that currently work for you, and make sure those people in there understand your goals, their goals, what they're going after, why, and that type of stuff. And make sure you're on the same page. And then you can start focusing on attraction, because nothing is worse than when you show up on your job and then two of the people you interviewed with last week aren't there anymore. Because like, I interviewed with, Jane and Sally, and both of them just gave notice. Like what kind of environment is this? Like, the two people that like wanted to hire me don't work here anymore. Huh? So
So who am I working for? And that
yeah,
person I built trust with over the interview is no longer here. So wait, what's happening?
yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what did I just step into? Make sure you understand your team. Make sure you understand where you're at right now with the people who currently work for you. Make sure their goals are in line with what you're doing as well. It's kind of like people management 101, but that's a huge
Right.
gap out there right now. And a lot of people are really focused on like getting to this number. Like, when we need to hire 15 people, we need to get to, a team of 12. And you're so focused on this idea of like, well, you get to a team of 12 people, then like, what is 12 people really doing? Like, you have a team of 5 and they're doing well. Why not have a team of 7?
Chris brings so much passion to connecting folks with the right role. And within our conversation, there were so many insights I had. I'm going to boil it down to 3 insights from the conversation with Chris. The first one is genuosity, or being authentically relevant. And when Chris talked about genuosity, I love when people make up words, right? Which is when you have a relationship where you trust that person because they have that best interest for you. So, genuosity as a people strategy, what does that exactly mean? And as a people strategy, it really goes into how are we recruiting for our organization in a way that we're saying, look, this is exactly who we are. We're not sugarcoating it. We're laying out exactly who we are. And here are the exact things that are needed for you to be successful in this role. So, as a people strategy, we create employee value propositions for our clients. So, we partner with them to say, what is the reason why an employee loves to work here? And the beautiful part of that is so often we are actually detracting folks from coming to our organization because they will not be a good fit. And that is a good thing. So, when we look at genuosity or authentically relevant to who we're attracting, we're very, very crystal clear and transparent around who we are as an organization, very specifically what the job needs so that we can attract them directly into that job. And it's not just what we're doing, but it's what is the why behind the work that they can get passionate and excited about. They have to have the skill set, of course, but what's that why behind it? So there's no bait and switch. Once you walk into an organization, you know exactly the organization you're stepping into, what that work environment will be like, because you know that you had somebody that was authentically connecting with you to determine, is this an and both fit? And so the business result of being authentically relevant and having that genuosity in that recruitment process and laying that out in the employee value proposition is essentially stating, look, we're going to have the right cultural fit for the folks that are coming into our organization, and that means that we're going to increase our retention, which means that we are decreasing the amount of time that we use recruiting. That is insight number one. Insight number two was uncover the mud. You know, when we think about mud, what do? We typically let it settle so we can see clearly through that water. And so having clarity in our communication. We, had a recent podcast with Tarek from Circle talking about communicating with folks with clarity and exactly the right way. That's no different here. So, clarity and communication is so important. So, as a people strategy definition, how are we defining and are we defining exactly what we mean by each of those core areas in our organization and in our business? Do we have definition very specifically around our deadlines? Do our job descriptions in the essential duties, are those written in SMARTY goals, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-based, and have a why to them that tie back to the core value? Do we specifically look at the definitions on what a specific goal is so we know just by reading the goal if we've hit it or not? Because if we don't have clarity and there's confusion, we are not going to have win-wins where we can get excited about the work we're doing every day because the water's really muddy. So we want to have clarity in that water. And the result, of course, is folks are so much more excited about the work that they're doing and they want to do it because they know what winning looks like. They know what the answers are. And we're not going around spending a lot of calories on trying to figure out what this actually means because it's stated up front in clearly defined ways. The third insight that I had from our conversation with Chris is AI is a tool for the person. And really, when we look at that, I love what he said. He goes, AI is like giving a bad golfer a new golf club. They're still bad. And here's the thing with artificial intelligence is all about the data set that it is set on. And the key clarity that I have on this insight is there are places for artificial intelligence to be used in very, very powerful ways. And there are places where we really need to get in and understand and have the conversations with people to understand what is the story behind the story. So, as a people strategy, we want to ensure that we choose the right data set to use artificial intelligence in the right way, very specifically. And then within that, we are still taking and looking very authentically. Think back to our insight number one with genuosity, that we're very authentically looking at what exactly does that individual need from a recruitment process to be placed in our organization to know that we truly have that right fit. And what that result is yes, we've saved a ton of time utilizing artificial intelligence in the right way, the data analysis, the piece of it, very specifically ensuring that we have the artificial intelligence in the way to ensure we're not discriminating against folks, all of those things, but we're still having the people touch to create the best fit for the organization, to the culture, to the job, to the team. And we're increasing what we can do as humans in the work environment. So, with that, the challenge that we have today, and I love when Chris said this, he said, get to the number or get to the result. And this goes back to insight number 2. Let's define what it really is that we're looking to get. Are we looking to hire 12 people? Or are we really looking to solve a very specific problem by the hiring of those 12 people? In my experience, it is we are looking to solve a very specific problem. So when we create the people strategy roadmap with our clients, we're very specifically looking at what is the problem that we are solving. Now we can define the roles assigned to those specific problems. And now we're hiring for the problem, not hiring to hit a number. So, with that being said, I want to challenge you to know the results that you're looking for versus the number that you are looking to hit. And with that, thank you for listening to the People Strategy Podcast this week. Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Traci, Traci Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.